Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with an Arizona functional, holistic, natural vet that's been in this business for a very long time. Great. This is going to be an amazing conversation that I think we're going to end up probably talking a lot about the microbiome because this gentleman here, Dr. Randy Aronson, is very focused on the microbiome, which I love. Of course, we love that. So, Dr. Aronson, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rob. Nice to be here.
Yeah, let's just that I total spoiler alert up front, but I want to know how you. It's very rare when when you hear of veterinarians that are studying and learning and thinking about the microbiome very specifically, and so I'd like to hear how you got into that and where you're at with microbiome care in your practice.
Great question. Well, I have always been looking for a way to improve the recommendations for our dogs and cats as far as their health and wellness. And we never really had a lot of testing available to help us with food sensitivities and especially microbiome. I started partnering with a company called Animal Biome in California. We started looking at DNA tests of stools. And between that microbiome test and a NutriScan test, which is a food sensitivity test through Dr. Gene Dodds, we now have the ability to get our animals on absolutely the right diets, absolutely the right supplements, and make those recommendations scientifically, not just guesswork, not just another elimination diet, certainly not a prescription diet, which I don't use. So that's how it kind of evolved, and it's getting better and better every day. And like you said, Rob, it's a never-ending learning process. I mean, we're all still learning. We're certainly in veterinary medicine, we're ahead of human medicine when it comes to these therapies, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. And so you said you use two different tests. What are you doing? Are you triangulating? Can you tell me how you work with those?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a pet that comes in with allergy. I have a pet that comes in with GI disease, behavioral problems, cancer. I immediately get what's called a NutriScan test. This is a food sensitivity test. Very different than food allergy testing because food allergy testing is a blood test, very expensive, also fraught with a lot of false positive and negatives. Food sensitivity test, Rob, really leads us on a track like, okay, we want to feed this pet this freeze-dried raw product. Is there anything in that product that's going to set this animal off for inflammation? Yep. And then I couple it with a fecal test through Animal Biome, which gives me a 10-page report. This is a company that does over 100,000 DNA tests on fecal, runs it through AI, and tells me exactly where the biome is. Are we off on this? Do we have too much of that? Do we need to add something else? And this gives me the ticket for getting these animals well on the way to wellness.
That's great. So it's almost like it's a definitive look, almost like a crystal ball into if I feed this, how will my dog do with it?
Right. I mean, it really does give us, like I said, some scientific basis to what we're doing. I did a lot of endoscopy in my day, where we're looking in the bowel with scopes, and that's an invasive procedure, requires sedation. We also do ultrasounds to look at bowel and organs in the abdomen, but this testing is non-invasive. It's not crazy expensive, and it gives us a really good starting point to get things going.
No, that's great. So what do you think about itchy dogs, allergic dogs, really these dogs that are very reactive when it comes to, foods and allergies, seasonal, otherwise? Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind after doing what I'm doing that these allergies are coming from the GI tract to start with. That people may think that's a crazy idea, but if we know anything about what's called leaky gut syndrome, we have these semi-permeable membranes in our intestines that keep things out that shouldn't be in our body and leave things and absorb things that we should really have. When that changes, we start getting all this stuff that goes into our blood and lymphatic system that will set us off, meaning itchiness, scratchiness, bad ears, bad skin. And this is the absolute basis to what I'm doing. I laugh because a lot of clients come in and they've done the elimination diet. They've done Apoquel. They've done Atopica. And, I tell people the true definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. I have a friend who's a really, really, really smart guy. And he said to me one time at dinner, he said, all I hear about these days is leaky gut, leaky gut, leaky gut. He's like, it sounds like such BS. And I said, listen, I understand why you might think that. But if you just spend a moment thinking about how glyphosate it's everywhere. It is in our rainwater. Okay. I mean, when it gets to rainwater, we're really in trouble. It's in basically every food, even if you have an organic farm next to or in close proximity to a farm that's using glyphosate, guess what? You could have that exposure. And our food has gotten, since I've been a kid, and I'm 52, since I've been a kid, we've just had more and more degradation of the ingredients, over farming, underutilization of better farming practices. So our food has less nutrients. And then on top of it, we stopped using sugar, which is already horrible for you. We started replacing it with like corn syrup. And so we've just found better ways to make food cheaper and crappier. And so it is no wonder that our guts are suffering. We're getting hit from this end, from this end, from this end. And guess what? So are our dogs. Tell me if I missed anything, and please tell me how you feel about that.
No, I mean, you're totally spot on. And the thing that's amazing, I want to tell you just a really quick little backstory. Went to a huge integrative summit with Dr. Andrew Weil, 1,500 DOs, MDs, naturopaths, one veterinarian, that was me. Talked to the head of pediatric gastroenterology from Stanford and talked about the gut and what she is doing. And they're definitely behind us on microbiome. But here's the thing that you'll love, Rob. She said that fermented foods are the number one thing that you can do to start the process to get this corrected. Things like goat kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and many other things. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here with you, but this is an amazing thing that we get our animals started on right away, even while we're waiting for these tests to return.
Yeah. Look, first of all, it's great for humans. It's no surprise at all. Dogs have been burying bones for millions of years. That's fermentation. They're fermenting meat, and Lord knows it stinks, but they love it. And of course, they've eaten the gut contents of prey animals, and in the gut is fermented whatever, grasses, herbs, vegetables, whatever. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. And also, the thing I love about that is that a more traditional, educated Stanford doctor is recommending whole foods, because when you ferment, it's just whole foods. It should just be. And we're not talking about this other type of precision fermentation and things that they're using to create like Beyond Burger and all of that stuff. That is not the same fermentation. It just shares the same firm. Yeah. But I appreciate you telling me that. It's really good to know, like, this is getting out in the world and the culture. And like we say to everybody, you don't have to buy Gussy's gut. We just we provide a service, and we're doing it at a very high level. But for gosh sakes, every single human should be getting a jar and fermenting for their dogs a pet healthy recipe.
No question. I mean, there's no question, and you and hopefully me are doing such a great service, because the more we educate people, the more we get this out there, the more it now becomes commonplace. People kind of understand what's going on. And Rob, the funny thing about integrative medicine and complementary medicine is, if you see the results, you will be hooked on what can be done when the body has a chance to heal itself. People don't understand that Andrew Weil was a charlatan for years. I was a charlatan for years. I mean, people think that I'm burning incense and banging drums in my office, and this is how I come up with how to treat these animals. Not the case. Not the case. We see the results, and you get hooked. I just spoke to Dr. Gary Richter the other day on a podcast, and he said the same thing. He said, how can you refute what you see with your own eyes, even as a left-brain, Western-trained veterinarian? And I absolutely agree with him.
Amen. And Gary's brilliant. I mean, and Gary's looking ahead to, just as you are, to longevity and future modalities and other things you can do to keep us or keep our pets living longer lives, but healthier, longer lives. Nobody wants to live a sick, long life.
Yeah, very important. We want that quality. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny, I'm not anti-Western medicine at all. I mean, we love our surgeons. I think we're incredible in the mechanical medicine space, the surgeries, but a lot of Western medicine has gotten very focused on pharmaceuticals, and what pharmaceuticals can keep you alive, but in horrible shape in a in a nursing care facility, but you're breathing, but that's really not health. And that's like you, Gary Richter, Dr. Billinghurst, they're focused on health span plus lifespan. So you can have both.
Absolutely. And I tell people when I do my talks is that the light switch changed for me when I realized that I was great at putting out fires. I could put you on a medicine, make you well, and then have two other things that I have to deal with because of that medicine, and then have two more. And I realized that I am missing something here. And this is when this all started for me almost 40 some years ago.
Wow. And Dr. Weil, if people don't know, it's Weil. People need to look up Dr. Weil. He's an incredible healer, just an amazing guy over in Arizona, and really, honestly, an icon in natural health, total icon. Well, look, I think that I think this is very interesting. So, tell me what else you're doing in your consults at your office. I know you don't need any more people walking in the door because you're so busy, but your practice is in Tucson, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Folks, make sure you go to his website, drrandypetvet.com. So make sure you visit those of you listening on the audio only podcast. And so tell us, in your practice, when you have just a regular healthy dog come in, what is it you're doing for the microbiome? How are you having your customers, your clients, thinking about their dog's microbiome?
That's a great question. So we start with making sure that we don't over-vaccinate these pets. We're doing vaccine titers instead of vaccinations. And vaccine titer, for those that don't know, is the true way to know whether you're really protected against distemper, parvo, rabies. And many of my dogs, and cats, once they're done the series initially as puppies or kittens, never get another vaccine for the rest of their lives, because we don't have to over-vaccinate them, which is going to be a huge immunological load, and again, affects our gut and our microbiome. Two, I make sure that we have the food conversation where we're getting simple carbs out of the diet, trying to get healthy, nutritious food, doing things like Gussys gut, doing things like omega-3s, making sure that there's the right complement of supplements. And just moving forward with those types of things. I mean, we do rehabilitation therapy here. We do ozone therapy. We do pulsed electric magnetic. I mean, you name it, we pretty much have added most of the integrative things you could possibly think of. But, as I said earlier, Rob, it just gives me a huge armamentarium of what I can do for my pets naturally to really help them have the kind of quality, well life that they should have.
Okay, so you said two things I want to go backwards on. So why would anybody care about vaccinations related to gut health? What? over vaccinating or otherwise?
Because the gut has 70% of our immune system in it. That's where our immunity comes from. When you put too much of an immunological load on the gut, meaning you're giving a 5-in-1 vaccine, distemper, hepatitis, leptospirosis, parainfluenza, parvo. This is a huge amount of immunological load. And guess what? The gut has to deal with that. People don't understand that. But if that's a healthy gut, you got a much better chance of dealing with it and handling it. But if it's not a healthy gut, there's a really good chance that that's going to put this animal in a top spin. And we see things like neurologic disease. We see things like GI disease where they're starting to have vomiting and ongoing diarrheas. And, we know that it's connected to this because fortunately for a lot of our patients that are proactive, we don't do that here. We do the vaccines, and that really helps an awful lot. We do the vaccination. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, sure, sure. And so if anybody doesn't connect those two and you're thinking, well, a vaccine is injected, not ingested, how would it affect the GI tract or the gut? Believe us, it does. So
yes,
we don't have enough time to go into a full science lesson, but it really does. So take this as inspiration to research it more. Okay, so the second thing I want to go backwards in is you said omega-3s. Why would omega-3s help with the microbiome? I thought only probiotics help with the microbiome.
Great question, Rob. Great question. Omega-3s are naturally anti-inflammatory, naturally moistening, and by being anti-inflammatory, anything that's anti-inflammatory helps our gut. Because again, more inflammation, the more the gut has to, the stimulation of the immune system, the more that affects all the body's organs. And, even dogs that are having behavioral problems, we know there's this gut-brain connection. Omega-3s can help all of that. I just spoke to a gentleman who does a test called Omega Quant, and they quantify how much omega-3s we have in our body, both humans and pets. And it's very fascinating to see. I take a ton of omega-3s, and I still wasn't getting enough. And so we know that the more we get that into our pets, the brighter their coat looks, the better their joints are. But it definitely has an effect on the GI tract. Because it is basically non-inflammatory, and we're trying to do everything we can to help our GI tract not get inflamed.
It's really interesting. I don't know about that test, but I'm going to find out now that you mentioned it. I'm going to take that test because I take about first of all, I eat a grass-fed, mostly grass-fed red meat, beef diet, so I get omegas that way. But I also take these really great omegas that I take about 1.5 times the recommended dosage every day. Still, I can tell like my hands are super dry. I must need 2 or 3 times a dose, and I'm going to look that up. Believe me.
When you find it.
I will. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm a little scared to see what I'm gonna come up with. If it tells me I need 4 times worth of omega acids.
Yeah.
Right. So this is great. All right. So when you have a pet that is over vaccinated, let's say, according to your definition, come into you. And I always tell people, look, if you've got a rescue dog, especially like we had a customer that I remember, they know that their dog was in and out of animal shelters 3 times at least. So each of those 3 times, full vaccinations, because that's the protocol. Is They don't know history, they can't ask the dog, so they vaccinate fully 3 times. So this poor dog had tons of problems. And so how do you deal with those dogs? How do you address that potential issue or vaccinosis or over-vaccinating?
Well, first of all, I do use something called Thuja, Thuja 30C. It's a homeopathic remedy. I've had really good luck with my vaccinosis cases with that starting. But just as we've been talking, I work on that gut. I work on making sure that I know what their microbiome is, making sure that I provide them the right types of fermented products. Whether I have to add, let's say, a pre and probiotic like Espellardi with fructooligosaccharides, whether I have to increase the fiber in that animal's diet. But all of that works to help detox the animal and also get some of that inflammation out of their body. You mentioned glyphosate. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the recent postmortems that have been done in university vet schools show that livers of these dogs with 30 times the amount of glyphosate that is allowable. And, people say, well, how does that happen? I don't use it around my house. Well, if you walk in a park, if you go to a golf course, these dogs walk on those areas, they lick their feet, boom, you've got that. And you know how toxic that can be. So again, working on the gut is really a very, very primary focus of mine to start with.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be thinking your neighbor, both your neighbors, your neighbor behind you, all three of them could be using those chemicals. Their lawn service could be using it. Most people don't even know. So they're using a lawn service. You go in, if you live near a golf course, forget it. And so there's all of these things that there's a thing called pesticide drift. And, I was just at a hotel in Montana with my dog, and I walked out and I was walking back towards the hotel, and there was a guy with a truck with a hose spraying the pine trees. It was like, what the hell are they spraying on these pine trees? So I literally called. I had an Uber picking me up. I said, come pick me up at the other hotel. I'm not going anywhere near that stuff. I don't trust it. It's not water. He's not watering the trees. And so these things are happening everywhere. We don't know it. If I had been 5 minutes later, I wouldn't have known. He would have walked on that area for sure, 100%.
Sure.
Then he licked his paws in the hotel or just absorbed it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
The point is you have to play a good defense and offense. And that's unfortunately, folks. I mean, do I like that this is the case? No. I wish all of our guts were perfect, and we're never, we didn't have to have this conversation. But we live in this world, and we have to play a good offense and defense.
Absolutely. And you can do that. I mean, the thing is, this is not something that we can't do. We can be proactive, but just like in our medicine, you have to be very, very proactive on your pet's health. And you really have to be your pet's advocate, because no one else will do that. And so just the things that Rob and I are sharing right now, simple changes. We're not talking about a lot, but how about like the Kibble that's produced that you can buy for $30 a bag, has superheat, dogs get 84% of their food is processed. Our food, we're about 59%. Because that food gets superheated, then gets super extruded. Now you have a double process that creates mallet reactions, advanced glycolation end products. These are all very toxic things, and people don't realize that simple kibble could be killing your pet.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know what to be more afraid of. The meat quality, the protein quality, what that meat was given, or the toxic lentils and everybody says grain free, but lentils are one of the most heavily pesticided and herbicided crops there are, or these advanced I can never say that. Yeah, right. And then of course oxidizing fats, because most of us know we should always put the top back on our olive oil, never leave it exposed to air, because it becomes rancid and very toxic. Oils that are oxidized are very bad for you. Well, these kibbles that are in bags, they're not, first of all, these packaging, when you become a nerd like I have to be with packaging, you have to have a very low moisture, what's that called? Moisture evaporation point or something, where it's the amount of moisture that gets in and out of your packaging. And then the same thing for oxygen. What's the oxygen barrier of that packaging?
Sure.
Well, a lot of these pet food packages, oxygen is freely, it's not a heavy amount, but over 6 months to a year of being on the store shelf. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, those people have to understand that that's common. I mean, you go buy a bag in a big box store, that's a year. That bag has probably been between the middleman and the store shelves a year.
Yep.
And that's the difference between, you work with some great people. You're working with Ian Billinghurst. You're working with people like Dr. Marty. These are people that have looked at all this, and we've all realized that we can do so much better. We can do so much better. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the other point I'll make really quickly is we were talking about omegas. People, ask me about, oh, I just go out and buy salmon oil for my dog, and it's a pump. And I go, listen, as soon as you've pumped the first pump, it sucks oxygen into that oil, and we're getting oxidative breakdown, and that your animal has to work even harder. It's not really helping them. And they also don't understand that like omega-9s for dogs can be very inflammatory. So you really want to focus on 3s and 6s, which are really critical.
Yeah, and you don't even need that much six. I mean, you can almost do that in your
Right.
sleep if you're
Right.
feeding a raw food diet. Um, the other thing is that concerns me, and I don't, do you go into this with your clients? Is like pay attention to how these things are extruded, how they're made, because there could be chemicals used in bringing out the omegas. So if you buy an inferior, or I call it inferior, but a cheap omega 3, believe me, you're going to get what you pay for. And it's just unfortunate. And you don't need that much omega 3s every day.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And so, I don't usually, there are products that I recommend only because I know that doesn't happen. But I have only a limited amount of time a lot of times with my clients, so I can't really go into a lot of the science. I refer them to Karen Becker's book or Dr. Richter's book, because all the science is there. They wrote things that I would have written, and it's perfect. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you just, again, you have to be very proactive about what you're feeding your pet and what goes into that gut, because it will be, when they showed in the Dog Aging Project that if you calorie restrict your dog, they will live an average of 2.5 years longer. When you feed things like Gussie's Gut and you're feeding whole foods, this is the way to do this. This is the way to get to that situation. And you don't have to be rocket science. You just have to, we've done a lot of the work for you. Rob's done the work. Ian's done the work. I'm looking at it. Gary, Karen Becker. I mean, we're all in that boat where we've done this, and like you had said before, we now have enough evidence-based medicine to support everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, there's podcasts like this. There's a million podcasts on there that, Karen and Rodney have an amazing show. There's no excuse not to be educated in this. In one reading of a good book, you can get most of it, but just keep yourself educated. I just heard on CBS not that long ago, CBS News, that Consumer Report found in the Lunchables treats or the little packages for kids, excess, I like that word, lead and sodium. So these are processed things. And folks, when you want to see a nightmare, go visit, if you can, a pet food manufacturing facility that makes kibble, processed, ultra processed food. It's a nightmare. And then when you look at all the ways it has to go through machinery and everything, all that machinery, all that metal, all the things that has to touch, that touches the food. It's no wonder these diets have recalls. It's just no wonder.
Well, as a first year student, and I went to vet school before the light bulb was invented, so this is a long time ago. They took us to a meat processing plant, even before it gets to the dog food company. And they showed us what is given to these dog food companies to make meat meal, chicken meal. And, you wouldn't believe the things that they scrape off the floor to make this happen. And
Yeah.
so, this is not a scare. We're not doing this. Rob and I are not doing this to have a scare tactic. We're
No.
just trying to get you the facts so you can be an educated consumer. Because I tell my clients, the more I educate them, the better a client they are, the healthier their pets are going to be. It just works that way.
No, these are not scare tactics, but these things are scary.
Yes.
If it lands, on you as being scary, that's a real thing. But what we're trying to do is just bring awareness to it. It's really funny, Dr. Aronson, is we have a dog treat called Gussy's Guttables, and we use regenerative heritage farmed pork from White Oak Pastures. And we spent a lot of time looking at pet food. And I literally, up until about a year ago, and I'm not kidding, now I've been feeding raw food for 25 years. I'm very, very aware of like when the pet world is, but I didn't know about, I guess it's called feed. Is that the right term? Feed quality meat?
Yes.
Okay. So when I heard that, I literally foolishly thought that all meat was USDA regular. It came from the human side. Maybe they were bad cuts or this or that. But feed quality is like just the junk of the junk. I like how you put it, it fell on the floor or worse. So can you tell us a little bit of a difference between quote human grade and feed grade?
Well, this is a very very big distinction, but it's really hard to kind of show that to our clients and our pet parents. Feed grade can be anything. It could be tumors. It could be, when I talk about people that feed chicken byproduct meal, according to the USDA, can be beaks and feathers. And we know they're not getting any protein from that. They may be getting some collagen, but it's just not what you should be feeding. When you get human grade products, basically you're sure that at least at some level you're getting a much better quality protein. You're getting a lot less toxicity. I mean, even in the feed grade products, they found euthanasia solutions from animals that were put to sleep. I mean, it just goes on and on. And again, that human grade can make a lot of difference.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Is this true? Like back in the day, whether that was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or so, that they were using like roadkill as meat source, like that's the you know chicken meal and the beef meal and things like that.
I don't know. I've heard that. I can't tell you that I know that's ever been confirmed, but I will tell you that when you look at our animals that were ranch raised or farm raised before kibbles existed, we saw 1/4 of the amount of cancer that we're seeing. We saw so little. I mean, you never heard about dogs and allergies. I'm not sure how much we didn't document or maybe weren't diagnosing as well, but it certainly was not anywhere near as prevalent. And the fact that I tell people when I do my keynote speeches and my seminars is our animals are living 2/3 of the lifespan they should be living. That's abominable. A golden retriever's life expectancy was 12 and 13 when I started in veterinary medicine. Now it's 7.
Yeah.
And there's a lot involved in that. There's genetics, but there's also epigenetics and nutrigenomics. Both are things we affect the body by what we're doing feed-wise, over-vaccinated, all the things that you and I have talked about in this podcast.
Yeah. How do you think about, like, I always believe you can overcome your genetics, both human and your animal's genetics. How do you think about the role of genetics in your pet's destiny of their health and lifespan?
Well, I really think that Gene Dodds has done some amazing work on nutrigenomics, which is basically the feeding of our pets and how it affects their genetic composition. There's been tons of work done on what's called epigenetics, which means all the things that we do outside that affect our genetic gene pool. Yes, some of us are slated to die at 30. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's the luck of bad genes, but I really believe in my heart that you can change that. They've been showing, and I'm 71, I'm still riding my bike 3 hours a day. I'm competing at a level with people that are half my age. And I'm very happy that I do that, but I really believe a lot of that is how I live my life, how I eat, the water that I drink. And Rob, I think you hit it. I mean, you can definitely change the telomere length in your DNA. This is all research that's going on right now. Why are they doing it in the dog? Because it's so correlate to you and I, and listen, there's a lot of interesting information for dogs, but the money is in people. They know that if they develop some of these things for you and I, it's going to work, whereas in a dog, we get to use that research because they're doing it, but it doesn't really mean that a company's going to go headstrong into it.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So talk to me now. Now we did genetics. So just give everybody a definition of epigenetics, like, what that means.
epigenetics to me is, and this is probably a loose definition, but epigenetics to me is everything we do outside of ourselves that can affect the genetic composition of our bodies. So we talked about over-vaccinating. We talked about eating very poor foods. We talked about lifestyle. We didn't talk about lifestyle. I mean, dogs don't smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. But, we do know that in excess can really be a problem. Look at the comorbidities that we're all dealing with and why we're doing these GLP-1 products like Wegovy and semaglutide. And, we're doing all this because they're always looking for an easier, faster way to affect the changes we've hurt ourselves with through epigenetics. And so my task and my admonition to all of you is, think about some of these things that you're doing. You don't have to make a huge change to make changes in your genetic composition and how your body handles things.
Yeah, amen to
so
that.
I'm sure that wasn't a real scientific definition of epigenetics, but that's kind of what I use for myself, quite honestly.
I full-heartedly agree with you on that. Also, I would even add to that, if I may, that what your pet's parents ate, how they were vaccinated, the medications they were on, their genetics, or their epigenetics are part of your dog's genetics. And maybe we just don't have instruments sensitive enough for this, or the science isn't there yet. We may find it's multiple generations back that, less and less and less the farther you go back. But it even makes it more important to, if you have an animal that lived a hard life or their parents led a hard life, to take extra good care of them.
Yes.
I want to ask you about the dogs you see. You talked about golden retrievers. They have a very high propensity for like bone cancers. I know those poor sweethearts. I mean, it couldn't happen to a nicer dog. I mean, like the golden retriever. I mean, so tell me what breeds you believe are kind of in the top like danger zone for that are very sensitive as breeds cancers. And I want to just call that out for the people who have those dogs.
Well, I mean, it's funny, but there are a lot. I think that question. There are a lot of things going into that question. Certainly, our larger dogs are much more susceptible to things like bone cancers and growth defects. Again, a lot of this has to come into spaying and neutering too early. And we know that if you can wait 14 or 16 months and let the dog's growth plates close, you have a much better chance not having knee, stifle injuries and pelvic injuries and hip dysplasia. We also know, like, there are breeds like the Doberman or the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel have heart disease. And we use a lot of ubiquinol, which is a very high-powered CoQ10, and it's really helped the heart muscle, and it really helps delay some of these problems. You know about the research that's been done with pet foods and heart disease. People don't understand that this research is really being refuted. This research was conducted by some big corporations. I won't even mention their names. But, it's to their benefit that we use their kibble and their pet foods because they want to get you away from some of the specialty diets. Just to tell you an interesting story, a lot of my animals are on some type of kibble because it's hard for people to cook all the time. It's hard to afford all of the whole foods. Sometimes it's really hard in Arizona to do raw because it's so hot here. So, the interesting thing is they started panicking when this article came out, and they said, let's check the dog's taurine level because that's supposed to be the problem. There wasn't one dog we checked that had anything but an overly high taurine level, so it's not that. And, and I think the things that we elucidated, you and I have talked about on this podcast, definitely have an effect on that situation. But, I think what I always tell people is if you're interested in a breed, get on Google. There's where Dr. Google can really come in and read about the genetic predisposition that breed has to what problems it might have, be it thyroid issues in Cocker Spaniels, be it the bone cancers you talked about in big dogs and golden retrievers, heart disease. I mean, it goes on, but you can learn about this. You can also do some genetic testing now, which will really help preempt some of this and tell us maybe there is a predisposition with their genetics to some of these diseases, and that really can be a real help.
Yeah, and the goal is that knowledge is power. You can take steps to compensate. This is not a death sentence. Like, no golden retriever must get bone cancer,
Right.
or any cancer. I mean, it just doesn't need to happen.
Right.
But you might have to work extra hard to make sure your environment's clean. And a lot of this has to do with personal choices. We're doing all these crazy things with chemical cleaners and plug-in air fresheners and all kinds of junk that's all made from chemicals. Like, it's just chemicals. So it's adding to the toxic load of our animals.
Yep.
And
My
yeah,
mnemonic that I use in my talks is pets. And I mentioned proper nutrition and microbiome, exercise, training and socialization. And S is stress reduction. And I'm not talking about you yelling at your dog every day. What I'm talking about is the formaldehyde in the carpeting, the air fresheners, the abnormal light that the pet's exposed to, crazy noises that the animal has to put up with. And it goes on and on. The water that they drink. I mean, we could talk about water forever. So, these are all things that if you look at these things and do the best you can, you're going to be on a much better path for your pet.
yeah. Well, that's great. So I feel like we could do another 3 hours. We're going to end it here.
I think the staff is probably knocking at the door here. Like,
I
you
know.
gotta go see some clients.
Yeah, you actually have real appointments, like a real hard stop. And I want to thank you for your time. We'll do another hour with each other. Well, we did 45 minutes because of your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Dr. Aronson, thank you so much. And everybody, please go visit Dr. Aronson's website, Dr. Randy Pet Vet.com. Thanks, Dr. Aronson.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for what you do. We really appreciate it. Thanks for letting us get this education out to our listeners.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for being on. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. Have a great day.